powerful weather system. So this is the GFS model with the jet stream, but the main energy and the focus is what's moving onshore through California and Nevada. We see that negatively tilted trough. We see those winds through the jet stream really strengthening to over 100 knots by those yellows. And we see that negative tilt continuing through our Friday into our Saturday. And we see those winds continuing to ride through the jet stream on a very strong basis. This is the European model. It gives us another perspective of what this storm could be. And here we do see a little more negative tilt to the trough. The GFS was a little hard to discern, but this one we do see a little bit clearer. We do see that negative trough as it builds its way into Colorado. We see those strong winds out in the exit region of the jet stream, and we see that trough continuing to dig and build Friday into Saturday. The European model has been a little more consistent in its model-to-model runs with the negatively tilted trough with the stronger winds in the jet stream. This particular run of the GFS is kind of catching up with it, but it has varied greatly over the weekend. So let's look at this system from a perspective of where we think it's going to be on Friday. And so we can see from the different model runs that we have seen over the last 2 days, this low pressure system is generally in the area of Nebraska and Kansas. And for a system that is 4 and 5 days out, those are the things that we are looking at right now. We're not so much focused on the mechanics, the exact location of the snow, of the rain, of the severe weather. We are keeping those things in mind, but we're really looking to see how do the models perform run after run. And that's why I showed the jet stream model, the two different ones, the GFS and the European. And I indicated that the European had been a little more consistent with its model-to-model run. Here's the GFS placement of the low pressure, the center of the low pressure at Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. So we see, again, it wobbles between Kansas and Nebraska, but generally it is between a 969 and a 975 millibar low. So again, this is a very powerful, strong system, and it's one that we have not seen anywhere in this part of the Midwest in a long time. I mean, we have to go back almost to 5 or 6 years ago with any system at any time of the year this strong in this part of the country. So again, as this forecast isn't going to give you the amounts of snowfall and rainfall, we are going to examine this system from its different trends and the things that we are seeing in terms of consistency from model run to model run. And in fact, the Storm Prediction Center has gone ahead and issued a marginal risk of severe weather for Friday, anywhere from Iowa through Illinois into western Indiana, down through Kentucky and Tennessee, Arkansas, Louisiana, all the way down to the Gulf Coast. And a reason for that is we're going to see dew points surging far north. We're going to see dew points in the 50s up towards Iowa, Missouri, central Illinois, 60s near the Gulf Coast, and we could even see some higher amounts. And this is another thing that we've been watching over the last several days. These dew point temperatures have been generally consistent model run to model run over the weekend. So we do believe that there's going to be a large amount of moisture transported northward with this system, with the deepening low, with those close pressure lines and the winds that are going to spin counterclockwise around it. It's going to pull a lot of moisture up. And so when we look at the storm cell composite, this is the map where we kind of look to see when we start seeing those grays appear and those darker grays, those indicate a higher level of supercell potential. And so we see by Friday afternoon, we start to see that across Iowa and Illinois and even some blues. And so when we start seeing those values, those blues indicating a value of higher than 5, that is a strong likelihood of supercells, and some of those could be severe. Now that dies off overnight Friday into Saturday, and our main focus on Saturday for severe weather is going to be across Louisiana, Mississippi, into Alabama, and then that's going to die out. And as this system moves towards the east, crosses the Appalachians into the northeast on our Sunday, we're not really going to see much in the way of severe weather. So our main focus again on Friday is going to be north in Iowa, Illinois, and Missouri, and then on Saturday down along the Gulf. So let's put this system into motion. Let's watch it develop as it comes out of the Rockies. We see that low pressure developing across parts of Nebraska. Heavy snow, and a lot of it is being spread from Montana, the Dakotas, into Wyoming, Out ahead of it, we're going to see a line of storms making their way through Iowa and Illinois. Saturday, we could see another line of storms making their way through the Ohio Valley and Tennessee valleys. Not severe, but definitely heavy amounts of rain are likely with this particular system. The other big thing is going to be the winds that are associated with this. We're going to see wind gusts 40 to 50 to 60 miles per hour with this particular system, especially across parts of Wyoming and the Dakotas where you're going to have that snow flying. We're going to see blizzard conditions existing for several hours throughout this upcoming weekend. Now, the details, the location, all of that is still subject to change, and we will refine this forecast in the coming days, but we want you to be prepared right now for the possibility of a prolonged blizzard conditions this upcoming weekend. We turn our attention, though, to that area of low pressure that is in eastern Colorado. What we've seen over the last few model runs is that the pressure of this low has risen slightly, about 4 or 5 millibars. And so that is not going to be as deep, as intense as maybe what we once thought. The all-time record for a low pressure in the month of March is 972 millibars. We thought we could rival that, but the latest model runs, again, are not hinting at that deep of a low right now. And that's why we pay attention to trends in the 4 to 5 day outlook. And as we get closer, now that we're 48 hours out from the event, we're now beginning to hone in on some of the more specifics. There's still a lot to iron out with this particular system, and we'll bring you the latest on it. But here's our latest think. Snow will be flying across Montana, Wyoming, and western Colorado by the time we wake up on our Friday morning. Out ahead of it through Kansas, through Oklahoma, and the panhandle of Texas, even northeastern New Mexico, those tight lines of equal pressure, we're going to have a tight pressure gradient here, and that's going to generate a lot of wind. And so one of the things that I'm not hearing a lot of people talk about is the fire danger, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later in this video. But for right now, I do want you to be aware that it is going to be a rain and snow event, but we're going to have wind impacting this system as well. And by the time we get to Friday afternoon, you can clearly see where that low pressure is, as you see that kind of comma shape with the yellow and green temperature bands across eastern Nebraska and northwestern Missouri. That is where the low pressure is going to be. That's where temperatures are going to be held down the most. But out ahead of it, with that counterclockwise rotation, we're going to pump those warm temperatures that are approaching the century mark in southern Texas and 80s all across the deep south. We're going to pump that warmth all the way up into Minnesota, where we can see temperatures in the low to mid 70s by our Friday afternoon. This is going to just add fuel to the system that's going to allow the possibility of severe weather. Let's just put the whole system into motion. And so we see that low pressure making its way through Nebraska, storms and heavy rain making their way through Michigan and Indiana on our Friday, snow across the Dakotas into Minnesota. But that secondary low forms down in the south, and that's going to really provide the mechanism for those severe weather to break out on our Saturday, and all that moves to the East Coast by the time we get to Sunday afternoon. The Storm Prediction Center has gone ahead and issued an enhanced risk of severe weather from central Illinois down through Arkansas and western Mississippi for our Friday. We have a slight risk extending all the way up towards Minneapolis, but down through Louisiana. And we feel that in that brownish color, that is where we will see the most likely scenario of supercell development. But we're going to continue to watch the model runs. I do think the best forcing and the best mechanisms for severe weather are going to stay probably south of Missouri and Kentucky, more in the Arkansas and Tennessee range. But no doubt we will have heavy rains, we will have strong winds, and with the particular system as it makes its way through the Ohio Valley. And on Saturday, we see a marginal risk extending up through Ohio down to the Gulf, and I think we could have isolated supercells, but our main focus, and where I think the most impactful tornadic outbreak is going to occur on Saturday, is going to be from Mississippi to Alabama towards Atlanta. Even into southeastern Tennessee, you're going to want to be on guard for the possibility of severe weather as we make our way to the afternoon. One thing that we want to talk about is the dew points that are going to be surging with this particular storm. We're going to see dew points as high as the mid-50s through the Ohio Valley. And it's one of those reasons I don't think we're going to see the supercell development that far north, because mid 50s is kind of marginal, but where we see the dew points nearing 60 and 60s along the Dixie Alley, we will see the greatest chance. This is our supercell composite index. We do see on Friday afternoon a chance of supercell development across Missouri and Illinois. But again, it's Saturday across Mississippi, Alabama, along the Gulf, where we see the greatest values of that supercell composite index, leading us to believe that is where the most severe weather is going to be focused. Again, not that you're not going to have heavy rain or wind with this particular system, but I think the severe weather will be to the south. When we look at the storm relative helicities, we look for those reds and those purples. Those tend to stay south of the Ohio Valley, through the Tennessee Valley, through the deep south. And again, this is another confirming factor of why we think it's Saturday that's we're going to see the more severe weather outbreak with this particular system. And our last map that we are going to look at is the energy helicity index. So it combines the CAPE, the instability in the atmosphere, with the storm relative helicity. And when we start seeing those yellows, that's where we have a good confidence that we're going to see some severe weather development. So we keep our eye out for supercells or discrete storms or even tornadoes in those yellow areas. And it's more a Saturday event that we are focused on. I mentioned the winds were going to be strong. We're going to see winds 50, 60 miles per hour across New Mexico and Texas on our Friday. Those strong winds move into the Ohio Valley, where we could see gusts up to 50 or 60 miles per hour. And across the deep south through Tennessee on our Sunday, and we're going to see those winds, again, 50 to 60 mile per hour. As we make our way through our Sunday afternoon, that energy is going to transfer to the East Coast, and we would expect strong winds at that time. And this is one of the things that I've mentioned we are going to have to be very concerned about, is the fire threat. From New Mexico through the panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma, all the way up to central Nebraska. As that system moves through, and we have those strong winds, relative humidities dropping to about 15%, dew points plummeting down into the teens, we're going to have widespread critical fire danger for our Thursday into our Friday. We have an elevated risk that makes its way all the way into South Dakota. So that is another factor that we are going to have to keep in mind. This is our Friday storm report, and we can see that we had over 46 different tornadoes across the Ohio Valley, stretching from Missouri through Illinois and Indiana. We had over 541 wind reports, 308 hail reports, bringing the total storm reports to almost 900 from Friday alone. If we look at Saturday's storm reports, we saw that number mainly confined across the deep south as we expected. 41 tornadoes with 156 wind reports, only 27 hail reports. We did think that the most impactful weather would be long-lived tornadoes across the south, and that is what we saw on our Saturday. Total reports are 224, a very active and very destructive weekend from places from Missouri down through Mississippi and Alabama into Georgia and the Carolinas.